Jackson, will this off?
Craig, let's just start with the news about Stuart Hawkins signing him to the first team and the decision to bring him aboard.
Yeah, another really, really talented young player. Obviously, there's high exposure moments in our world when our guys get selected and included in national team stuff, and there's times to act, and this was a good time to act. He's had a really good season. He's played some really, really good games with Defiance. Still has a ways to go physically, obviously, to compete against grown men on a consistent basis, but his development's been really, really promising over the last couple of years, and it's just the right time.
Talk to us about his game, specifically his traits that you like, and also the things that you want to see him work on.
Well, one of the things we like is size. He still isn't at full maturity, obviously, but when people figure out who his family is and they start to look structurally at the genes he comes from, we expect a little bit more height and a little bit more muscle over the next couple of years. He reminds me a little bit of Reed. He's signing as a young man, but in a couple of years with the work in our group, with the work with our staff and performance staff, he's going to be a beast. And that, along with his technical ability, his willingness to actually not panic and try and pass, is something we value pretty highly here.
Is there any correlation to his game in terms of those qualities and what you see from, say, a kid like Jackson Reagan, who also is a good passer?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard. How many years apart are they?
Yeah.
Stuart has several years to go before he reaches Jackson's age, so who knows where that development goes. The game will evolve in those years. The league will evolve. The challenges will be different. But yeah, I mean, in terms of development, in terms of maturity, in terms of the way he approaches practices, training sessions, as well as games, we see a lot of similarities in the way he approaches those things as a human being, and that's something we value. We pay a lot of attention to what's going on off the field too.
So to clarify, the why now is just to secure the player so he doesn't go anywhere else?
If you want to try and put one reason on it, sure. It's a multitude, as always. I mean, it's obviously talent and performance. That's what drives the decision. It's not just because someone else identified him, but the world is evolving. MLS is valued much more highly than it was. It's much more viewed than it was. So when we have young players that are developing as rapidly as Stuart, competing with Defiance as frequently as he is at a high level, and garnering attention that exposes him internationally, then we start talking about the balance between daily performance and perhaps the business and how we value the player and how we want to protect the player within our organization.
Yeah, the reason of the question is just because you don't see a lot of 17-year-old center backs, and it is arguably one of your deepest positions.
Yeah, for now.
Okay, so
every position, that's the fun in what we do. The position that's deepest this year may not be the deepest next year. The position that's thinnest last year, it's probably not as thin this year, and you address as you go. But until MLS reaches a point where we're 2-3 deep at every position, financially speaking, I mean, there's going to be adjustments every single year. With Stuart, we expect him to keep growing over the next several years. So this isn't us saying Stuart needs to play for the first team right now, or January, or February. He needs to be included. He needs to be the continuation of his maturation as a player, but also as a human being, is physically when he catches up to compete on a daily basis without us putting him in a situation to get injured by pressing against those physical and natural growth moments is really important as well.
Played in this tournament, the Jizik Cup, I guess, and then there's obviously the upcoming U17 World Cup. And so I guess it's the timing of this previous tournament and the upcoming U17 World Cup, does that really play into this, or is this sort of like it was convenient to announce it now, but this was a decision that was made independent of those two things?
It's independent, but it's influenced. Absolutely. I mean, exposure moments are important, and growth is really important. To be naive and to continue to speak naively about the topic of young American promising players is just something that I'm not willing to do. So the timing matters, and exposure moments, him being involved consistently with youth national teams and really potentially being an impact in a really, really high international exposure situation in short order, that absolutely, it influences what we're doing. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you it doesn't. performance is the driving factor, but let's be fair. There are a lot of reasons.
So he is the first homegrown player that's primarily a center back that you've signed.
Yeah.
Jackson Reagan, obviously, a different category there.
Didn't sign him at the same age.
Right. Didn't sign him at the same age at all. How relevant is it, or that he is usually we see these positions, these younger players are of a different profile for the most part. And I guess what does it speak to, like, the uniqueness, or is he a unique talent in that way?
It's a really difficult position to sign young because the physical attributes of a center back in MLS are clear and obvious of who's performing at the highest levels. And so there's some speculation on where we think he'll end up. I was at RSL when we brought in Justin Glad and developed him, and there's some expectation on both sides of this. There's a lot of pressure put on a young man here to stay the course and really pay attention to everything he's doing on the field as well as off the field, the way he's eating, the way he's lifting. And there's a lot of pressure on our staff now and our performance staff to develop in the right way physically. But it's a long-term play. I mean, most of the time when we're signing young players, they're attacking players where the goal output or the assist output is obvious. And you say, oh, well, here's the impact they had on goals and assists, and this is why we think it'll translate. This is obviously a much harder and more subjective conversation to explain to all the fans, but at the end of the day, this is one of our top performing players week in and week out within our youth system. And it's to the point now where, frankly, the way he's played in Defiance games this year, kind of say he might even be a little ahead of where we thought he'd be. He's physically smart. The way he positions and plays on the field puts himself in good defensive positions right now to not necessarily get into the physical challenges that in the future will be invited.
Raised, and there's like a financial aspect of this, but how does this affect the way he's used in training? Like, is he going to now be training with the first team more often? Is he still going to mostly be with Defiance? Like, how does this ultimately affect his trajectory?
We've been sneaking him into more sessions than you guys know, so I don't think it's going to change a lot because he's been included in a lot of first team sessions. That also plays into the decision making. For me, when I talk to the coaches about signing young players, this is truly the only field that matters. Can they perform at this level consistently? And what we've seen with Stuart throughout the year is when he comes into the first team training sessions, the level doesn't drop. Does he stand out as elite? Not yet, but he doesn't deter from what's going on the field, and that's a huge thing for a young player. So I don't think the roles will change. He still needs games. He still needs to play a lot of minutes, and he still needs to train in both environments, frankly, in order to consistently come up and be challenged by the first team players. But he needs to perform and be one of the top 3 players on the field every single week for Defiance in order to break into this team.
To go into another topic here, when it comes to you as the president of soccer, the GM, and you look at a guy like Sam Adeniran doing as well as he is with another team, what goes through your mind, and is there regret? Like, how does that work within you?
Pride. We're the ones who gave him a chance. We're the ones who brought him in. We're the ones who signed him, and we're also the team that paid the price for expansion in MLS. So, I mean, this is part of the reality we live in. Without expansion, Sam's playing for us, flat out, right? So he would still be contracted here. He'd be on the field for the Sounders. But we're in a growth-oriented league, and that's part of our reality. So these things happen. But 3.5 years ago, when Sam didn't have a place to play, we were the ones that believed in him. We're the ones that brought him in, and our Defiance staff are the ones that developed him and gave him this platform to go on and perform. So, there's always the one that got away, but Sam's not it. I'm sure you could zing me with 1 or 2 others, but that one I love seeing Sam play. I love seeing Sam perform, and we as a group take a lot of pride in being a part of that. And only due to league process and growth is he not playing for us. So for me, there's nothing to regret in that one.
Any other questions? Cool. All right.